So for this tutorial, we're going to look at exporting our animation as a simple GIF and how to go ahead first and create that animation with just two assets that we made in Adobe Illustrator. So I'm going to start out in Adobe Illustrator, and let me make this bigger. At this point, you should have two different things made. One, you've got your character. So right now my character is an AI document. Then I've also got my background made. And I've made that as an AI document. So I've got two flat, static images. But I don't want to use Illustrator documents in Adobe Animate because that'll be way too complex. So I want to go ahead and simplify these to begin with. So the first thing I'm going to do is export both of these as PNG files. So I'm just going to go up like before in DID1 to File, Export, Export As, and I want to export them as PNGs. Now I'm going to click Use Artboards, just because if anything went off the edge, I can just simply trim it off. And I can title it whatever I need to. Let's say background. And I'm going to put this wherever I need to. A lot of times I do desktop, but you're going to do wherever you want. And I'm going to hit export. When I export it, I want it to be about 150 PPI will be fine for a GIF because that's low quality anyways. And I'm going to make my background color transparent. And I'm going to hit OK. Now it's going to say, do I want to cancel or replace? I'm just going to keep it going because I already made this. I'm going to do the same thing with my character. I'm going to go up, I'm going to File, Export, Export As, export it using Artboards, Snowboarder to wherever I want it. So I titled it Snowboarder. I'm exporting it to my folder that I made called Animation Tests. I'm going to hit Export. Again, 500 PPI, that's 500 pixels per inch. And I want to make sure, absolutely sure, that this is set to the background color being transparent. If I have a white background, then my character is going to have a white square around him wherever I put him on my stage as an animated feature, which is obviously not desirable. So I want a transparent background, and you can tell it's transparent because it's got this black and white checkerboard. So I'm going to hit OK. I'm not going to actually replace it. So I've done that in Illustrator, I've exported as PNG, so now I'm done with Illustrator. And I can go ahead and I can go into Animate. Now, when I go into Animate, I need to go ahead and say File, New, and I'm going to create a new Actionscript 3.0. So I select Actionscript 3.0, and it's going to ask me for width, height, and units, frame rate, all these things I can change ahead of time. But we're going to keep it at the default for now. So my width and height, keep it at 550 and 400. Ruler units, I'm still going to change it to inches just because that's what I know. And frame rate, 24 frames per second, or FPS, is fine. So I'm going to hit OK. Now, once I've made my document, let me make this a little bit bigger. I've got several things happening. I've got my stage, I have my timeline down here, and I've got my properties off to the side, but I want this to be my library. And I put my tools to the far right. Your tools might be over on the right, so you can drag them to the left, where I keep mine on the left, as you can see. So I want to go ahead, and in my timeline, I've got one layer, and I would like two layers. So I'm just going to go down to the bottom under timeline and click on my new layer icon. So I have two layers now. I'm going to double click and name one character. Oops, can I spell? Yes. And double click on layer one and call it background. Now I've got my two layers. Now you're going to notice several things. You've got two layers, and then off to the side, to the right of my layer, I've got all these little frames. Now right now, this shows me from frame 1 to frame 235. I want to see more frames like that. So I'm going to go ahead and change with my resize timeline view down here with my little mountains. And I'm going to scroll that so that I can get to see at least 240 frames on my document or on my timeline. So I'm going to go ahead and get that all set up. And at that point, I'm ready to go ahead and start setting my keyframes and filling them with content. Whoops. Okay, so I'm back in Animate, and as you can see, when I have my frames, I've got nothing in them. They're just empty. So I want to put something in frame 1. Now, I'm going to pull objects out of my library, but currently my library doesn't have anything. So what I want to do is go ahead and find where I saved my files. I saved my files, the little PNGs that I just made, into this folder called Animation Tests. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to drag stuff out. So I made my files, my snowboarder PNG and my background PNG. And I'm going to drag and drop them into my library just directly out of the folder. At that point, I'm going to go ahead and now I'm back in Animate and I can use these assets however I need to on my stage. So my snowboarder PNG, I'm going to drag and I'm going to drop right onto my layer. Well, before I do that, I want to make sure a couple things. I can do it because it worked. I wanted to make sure I was on my character layer. I was. I had frame 1 selected. I just dragged him right in. Now he's a little big. So if I zoom out a little bit, I can see he's going off the edge of my stage. So I'm going to go over and grab my free transform tool. And I'm going to scale him down, holding down shift so I don't skew him. Place him how I want. I can zoom way in now. And now he fits much more nicely on the page. I can hit return. And it's all set. I go back to my select tool. And now I've got my character. I can move him around however I need in frame 1. So I'm just going to kind of center him on my stage. Looks pretty good to me. Now, I want my character to exist there. He exists in frame 1, but if I go to frame 2, there's nothing there. Frame 2 is empty. It might look like if up on my stage there's something, but if I were to play my video or my movie, there's nothing going further. So if I've got a 240 frame per second frame rate, and I want my video to be about 10 seconds long, so it's 24 frames per second, sorry, and I want it to be about 10 seconds long. That would get me to about 240 frames. So I'm going to click on frame 240, and I'm going to, on frame 240, in my character layer, I'm going to go up to Insert, Timeline, Keyframe. And now, in frame 240, my character is there as well. So if in frame 1 my character is there, and frame 240 my character is there, it's going to automatically, since it's a keyframe, fill all the frames in between 1 and 240 with the same character. And everything's set. So from 1 to frame, technically to frame 239, there's my character. And then frame 240, he's back. So now if in frame 240 I move him a little bit, but frame 1 he was over here, that's going to be a bit of a problem. So I want to make sure that he's where he was. So I go back and forth. Oops, I didn't move him enough. So I need to move them over a little bit. Frame 1 and frame 240 match. My character's good. And that's all I need to do. And I can go ahead and I can even lock that down by clicking on the dot under the lock icon. And now I can't mess with my character at all. I'm going to do a very similar process now for my background. I'm going to zoom out a little bit though. I'm going to go to my background layer. I'm going to click on frame 1. And I'm going to drag my background PNG out of my library onto my stage. Now, my character, I want the background to be traveling this direction. So I'm going to start it and drag it all the way so it's right up against the right-hand edge of my stage. It's a little bit bigger than my stage, top and bottom. So if I want to hit my free transform tool, I can hold down shift and I can scale it down a little bit so it fits better. Cool, that's good. And then I can go back to my move tool, my select tool, and I can drag it over to the side. Cool. So in frame 1, there it is. Now I need another keyframe, just like with my character on frame 240. So I'm in my background layer. I go to frame 240. I'm going to click on that frame. There's nothing there, right? Because it's an empty frame. So I'm going to fill that. I'm going to turn it into a keyframe by hitting Insert, Timeline, Keyframe. And now it just copied what I had in my first keyframe. Now that's fine, but I actually don't want it that way. So in frame 1, it's here. Frame 240, I actually want to now select this whole PNG and slide it over until it's justified to this edge. Now what's going to happen is it's going to start out in frame 1 on this side and end on frame 240 on the opposite side. But if I were to play my video, it's just going to jump. Like it's just going to all of a sudden go through, and it's not moving at all because it's in this keyframe. I didn't tell it to do anything. And now when it goes to frame 240, boom, it just jumps. That's not a very exciting animation. So 240, it's in this location. Frame 1, it's in this location. And I want it to gradually move from one location to the other location. So I'm going to split the difference. I'm going to look about halfway around frame 120. I'm going to click on my background layer on frame 120-ish. Right click. I'm going to say create classic tween. And if I create a classic tween, what Animate just did was it said, okay, you wanted it to start here and end here in 240. We're going to fill in all the gaps in between those two and move it from where you wanted it here to where you wanted it here seamlessly across those frames. So now if I go back to frame 1, but then I play my movie, now it gradually scrolls my background across the stage until it gets to frame 240. If it's distracting for you to see what it looks like with these edges, you can always see what it's going to look like without this excess information out here by going to Control, Test Movie, Test and Animate, and it'll give you a little pop-up window that shows you what your movie is going to look like. That looks pretty good. So I think we're ready now to export this as a GIF. So I'm going to go to File, Export, Export Animated GIF. And for this project, we're going to keep this really simple. We're going to leave it unnamed. Right now, I have 256 colors to choose from, which is more than I need, so it's not messing my colors up. I told it not to dither, but I'm going to let it do a dither, a diffusion dither, which just changes sometimes if it needs to fade colors together. Instead of getting this hard line, it makes it a little bit more effective. And that's really all I'm going to mess with. So I'm going to hit Save. I'm going to title it whatever I want to title it. Snowboard GIF. Oops, can I spell board? No, I cannot. There we go. Snowboard. It's a GIF file format. I'm going to save it to my desktop. I'm going to hit Save. At which point I should have a nice GIF made somewhere right here. So I'm going to go ahead. There's my GIF. And if I click on it and I hit the space bar, it's going to open it in a little preview and it's going to show me my GIF. Oh, that's actually a more developed GIF that I made. It looks like I've got this one over here. So snowboard GIF here. That's the one I just made. And there he goes, snowboarding across my snowy landscape. And that's really it. So that's how you're going to go ahead and create your video or in your simple GIF in Adobe Animate.